Okay.
Okay, so we just introduced what our topic was today, and what this meeting is about, and just turned on a recording. So I don't think I have anything right now. Cassie, do you have anything more to say?
No, it's just a pleasure, and please be kind to us. No, it's lovely to be here, and so I thought I'd start with a meditation, and obviously it's sort of the one in relationship to itself, in a process of realizing potentiality in every emergent ways, as Tim says. And I was thinking that one of the things that we don't do very well in our community and society is actually our caring for ourselves and our relationship with ourselves. So I thought that might be a really good topic also to think about in the rooms when we go off to do the Zoom. So just to get us into the zone, if we just do a little meditation. So just make yourself comfortable. I think we'll start off with just listening to the ambient sounds in the room. There might be humming, whirring, barking, aircraft, wind, distant chatter. The world continues relentless, but now for these moments, you can just take time for you. So relax into your own special silence. Take a deep breath and relax into being. Concentrate, if you will, on your breath. Comfortably expanding your lungs. Each breath life-giving. Energizing. Calming. Take a deep breath. Relax. Go deeper into just being. Regather your thoughts. Put them to one side. Take another deep breath. Are you able to feel at peace? Are you able to feel warm, enfolding silence? Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Go deeper. Relax now into benevolent being. Feel the love. Be cherished. This is a soul healing moment. We all need the love to be found with being one with being. Be still. Be loved. And then gently return to your gorgeous, most wonderful body. Feel the miracle of your heart, your brain, your eyelids, lips, fingers. How miraculous it all is. Welcome back. Are you happy to give us a topic, Rick, or do you want to think about the relationship with self and how difficult it is to give ourselves self-care? You're muted.
I mean, that topic is good. I was just thought the way I would just read sort of some quotes from Tim from last ICU meeting and bring that into this relational field also, I guess you could say. You know, what Tim spent much of the time in that meeting was saying sort of one thing over and over again in different ways, but it's basically that the one is in an ever constant relationship with itself, realizing potentiality in ever new emergent ways. And the individual is in constant relationship to the whole, always, and never ever just the individual. What happens when we truly see this now? Not as an idea, but actually see it. And as I was contemplating this, I also recognized how we think our body is kind of separate and not in relationship, an interdependent relationship with the world. And I recognize that this body is only this body because of the world we're living in. And you can't take this body for more than a few seconds outside of this environment and it will survive. It's in relationship to the oxygen and air. It's in relationship to gravity. It's in relationship to the air pressure. And we could go on and on. You take one of those away, the body is not going to survive. And I was just thinking, what if you take this kind of interdependentship of the body and bring it to sort of the psyche also? We so think the psyche is so separate. And yet, what if the psyche is this relational field that Tim is sort of pointing to? You know, the thoughts that are rising now are rising because of the thoughts that you're hearing me say, and the thoughts that are happening from maybe what happened yesterday, from what happening this morning, from what Tim said 2 weeks ago. These thoughts are all in a relationship to themselves also in this relational field. This psyche is not, as Tim seems to be saying, is not a separate individual psyche. It's always in relationship to the whole. The whole, the one, is always relationship to itself. And something is emerging. A new potential is being realized. And I think he's asking us, what if we truly see that not as a concept, but feel it into our bones and see the truth of this? Then what? So that's what I was thinking. It could start a discussion. And you can go wherever that field wants to go, right? Because it's going to be in relationship to itself, and something's going to emerge. So I thought we'd give ourselves 20 minutes. And I thought, well, how do we want to break this out? Three groups of three, or 1 4 and 1 5? What are you feelings, your guys, gals? Any? 3 3s? Okay. 3 3s. We'll do 3 3s.
But I had a lovely quote from Tim that he said quite a long time ago, but it's one of those ones I've written down, is that everything is a reference point interacting with the whole. And it's another way of seeing it, isn't it? A reference point is still a relationship, but it's interacting with the whole.
Yeah.
So even if it's the most terrible thing or the most vacuous thing, it's a reference point that they're interacting with the whole. It's another slightly different way of saying it, but I think I love that one. It just...
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. That's another juicy thing that's just now a new reference point right here.
Yeah.
In relationship to all the other thoughts that are coming, and that's going to be included. And isn't this amazing process? Yeah. So I'll give this breakout room a try, see what happens. So be patient, and you have to, if you haven't familiar with breakout rooms, you have to click on it to accept it, I think. And so we'll give it a go. Okay. 3 breakout rooms, assign automatically, create. And I'm going to open all the rooms now, and you just kind of agree to go in. Room 3 only has 2, so I'm going to try to, it didn't include me, so I'm going to try to include me in that once it's going.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
Hi, Judith.
Well, this is sort of a time we could share a little bit about what came up on our group and see, and then spur maybe the next session. But we could sort of share in a bigger group here. Anything in particular that you felt inspired you, touched you? Yeah, Jim.
Well, this is sort of a silly follow-up, but I got cut off when I was about to give a recommendation, which may or may not have been welcome, to Brian and Olaf about a new author. I'm excited about his view on time, and it's a Rebel Wisdom interview. I don't know if you know the website Rebel Wisdom, but he was interviewed for their first book club, that book we were talking about, and it's about an hour or so interview, and it will give you a real feeling whether he's your kind of guy or not. You don't have to read the book to get that sense. So that's just what I want to finish. I'm sorry.
Didn't Tim do something for Rebel Wisdom? Didn't he give an interview or something? I think he did.
Yeah, it's a British thing. It's a pretty interesting gathering of folk. I don't like all that they do. They're a little adversarial for me, but they're definitely a growing edge for the sort of non-corporate, non-left intellectual culture. I have a lot of respect for what they're doing.
So what did you think, Stephen, of your chat? Was it a good chat? Enlightening?
It was great, and I didn't want it to finish because it was we were really motoring, you know. Where we started was Henry and me don't quite agree about non-duality. I think it has a lot of value, and my point is that Tim wouldn't be where he is today without going through that whole non-duality scene for many, many years. But I totally agree with Henry that Tim has moved it on quite radically. So I kind of embrace both. I still quite like Rupert Spara and Eckhart Tolle and guys like that, you know, ladies called Gangaji, you know, but they all do this thing is like there's no separateness, everything's one, you know. And I totally get Tim's thing that oneness only realizes itself through separateness. And I think that's a profound change from non-duality, but I still think there's times when I can bliss out on non-duality and I don't have Steve yakking away, and it's very pleasant and it's blissful, but it doesn't last very long. But then we strayed into like our paths, how we're here. And Judith was very interesting about, well, I'll let Judith speak for herself, but I found that very interesting. And Henry then didn't have time to even go into his past, so that's why we didn't have enough time.
Yeah.
But Judith was fascinating, and I found that very interesting. So I'll let her speak for herself.
Well, we didn't get to finish the getting our. Stephen came up with, well, what's your background? What's everybody's background? How do we get where we are, you know, today? And so we didn't get to hear from Henry at all. And actually, I don't know. Anyway, so you're curious about mine was because I grew up a Lutheran, an inactive church family, but still we were Lutheran, and I went to catechism, and then I ended my teen years falling in love with a young man that eventually became a minister. So I was a Lutheran clergyman for almost 30 years. But before those 30 years were up, I was moving away from the church. So, yeah. Part of it was I questioned, you know, some of the theology. I questioned, and I didn't like being abused, the religious abuse that went on. And so finally I just said goodbye. And of course, the marriage didn't last much longer after that because, you know, and before that, I was introduced to New Thought material. I mean, where I got the books, how it came across. And I began to find other places to educate myself. And so I was way ready when I turned on YouTube a few years ago and found Tim Freke. And I said, yeah, that makes sense. And I'd also been introduced to Carl Jung very young, as a very young woman, going into Houston to the Jung Institute, and had some wonderful introduction to that, so I love it when we talk about Jung here. I just get real excited.
It's funny, isn't it, Judith, that actually you begin to realize that something isn't quite right when there's no love shining through, when there's unkindness or spitefulness or exclusion. And then you suddenly think, is this a Christian or a Lutheran or Jewish or any sort of a thing? It's not real, is it, when there's no love behind it? It's got to have love if it's actually going to be true.
Yeah.
And I think when they hide behind quotes, you ask them a question. I've traveled quite a lot in the Middle East, and I ask them a question about Islam or religion, and I go quite deep, and they can't answer. So I was in Oman for a month. I had about 15 Qurans by the end of it, because their answer to that is, here's a Quran. All the answers are in there. I was saying, well, what about what Hubble are sending back, about dark matter and about birth of galaxies and stuff? Where's that in the Quran? Here's a Quran, Or there's no answer for it, but they won't move on from it. They just won't move on. Same with Bible. Yeah. You think, come on, guys, 3,000 years ago, we don't even know who wrote it. Jesus or Muhammad or Allah, I don't know. Who wrote this? Blokes wrote it. That's why God is male, because men wrote all this. I mean, really, God's old, pompous, no sense of humour, because the guys who wrote it were old, pompous, and had no sense of humour. I do think that. I think God is a reflection of what the people who controlled society were about,
Yeah.
So
frustrating. Sorry, yeah.
Judith, could I ask you a quick question? And that is that you used a powerful word. You said you felt abused religiously, and I'm curious whether Cassie's eloquent description was the kind of thing that you were experiencing, or how would you elaborate that? I love what she said. Kind of curious about your experience.
As a pastor's wife in particular, there's the projection of everybody on you. And so for you, you just couldn't be who you were. You couldn't be you. You had to be what they wanted you to be. You had to live where they wanted you to live. You had to live the life they wanted you to live. And I was, I wanted to go back to school, and I did that, and that was not okay, because I didn't have the time or energy. I wanted to take a step back from teaching Sunday school. And so when I took a step back, when I'm talking about them just, not a physical abuse like you hear about in some churches, but just the disrespect or the lack of allowing you to be an autonomous person.
Yeah. The threat of exclusion is pretty powerful.
The what?
The threat of exclusion, being excluded, is powerful kind of abuse in a way. Yeah. I think
the term that's coming up in my mind, Judith, is a prisoner of ideology. That they had
that's a good term. Perfect.
What Lutheranism was and what a minister's wife was, and you had to be that and nothing else.
Yes, you had to be that.
Growth,
and
limited growth.
He said, wasn't real good at that.
But again, the reason why I like Tim's stuff is I can get that off scientists. I've had discussions with scientists, physicists at a dinner party. The minute you start to push mystery and wonder and spiritual side, they'll almost do a religious bit. They'll go, look, this is nonsense. You're just specks of cosmic dust in a meaningless universe. Get over it. There's no meaning to it. There's no meaning. You put a meaning in there where there is no meaning, and they almost become religious about it. And then I say, well,
what's so interesting about that, Stephen, is don't we find some events in our life more meaningful than others? And so what is that about? So with a scientist, I always laugh at when a scientist says, there's no meaning in this. Well, what about the things that are meaningful to us? What does that say about
But they'll
this
say
universe?
that's your projection. There's no meaning. It's you projecting meaning onto something that's meaningless. And they're quite almost, like biblical people. They almost get on a pulpit and then I feel ridiculous.
Another kind of fundamentalism, really.
Yeah. And this is where I do agree with Tim. It's where the two merge, where science and spirituality, you drop out of each of them, but there's emergence of them. And I think he's really good on that. I think that's a great little way of
I find a little kind of a little hypocrisy in that, because it's sort of like the scientists seem to be, they're looking for meaning in science. They're looking for meaning in grasping that this universe has no meaning, And so I sort of feel it's the soul almost in my own sense. The soul feels, I think that meaning is something probably, I think Tim would say, is part of this evolutionary process, that emergence. And it's real just as anything else is real. Meaning has been created. The universe has created meaning, and it's here now. And scientists are looking for meaning in their own way, and they're disregarding the artist definition of meaning, maybe. Yeah. And so it's sort of funny, kind of.
It's like looking for God through a telescope. And when I can't find it, then it doesn't exist. It's using the wrong tool.
Yeah, totally.
It's simply the wrong meaning. So I'm a big believer in science. It's absolutely great for how things work.
Yeah.
But why? It doesn't say a lot about why.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think, Henry? Are you in disagreement, or are you agreeing? Because you didn't get your say in the last discussion room. So.
Right. Thanks, Cassie, because I was about to go there too. I said, I still think what Stephen suggested in our little group was, how did you come by? Where did you come from to get here? And
searching for meaning.
Henry was just starting to say something when we got cut off. So if you don't mind, I think that would be a great.
Well, for Henry to say his thing, yes, that would be good.
I was brought up Christian. I was confirmed. I left it just after being confirmed because I questioned the existence of God. And by the time I hit 19, I had read a book that I figured many people had but didn't bother reading, which was the Bible. And eventually I found my way to the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I became a Jehovah's Witness for 6 years. I sent
how many years? Reaction.
I've been there.
For how many years?
6 years.
I think
6 years.
So at that point, Henry, were you actually believing that you were allied with that particular sect, or were you feeling that you then couldn't leave because of exclusion? Or
leaving wasn't even a decision. I kind of left without realizing I was leaving. And Jehovah's Witnesses believe they have the truth of God and Jesus and the Bible. And I came to be in disbelief of that, and immediately went on to start studying metaphysics and reincarnation and the Rosicrucians philosophy, theosophy, and eventually started studying goddess worship, and became a witch, and spent several years in pagan communities, very shamanic orientation. And we did things like vision quests, going out into the woods and spending a day or two fasting and meditating. And from there, I became a ceremonial magician. and studied, oh goodness, I can't think of the names of some of these things now. But magic as a personal way to understand our holy guardian angel or our higher self, or something along those lines. In just being spiritual, like I had totally rejected Christianity, and spent several years after that studying Conversations with God and the Course in Miracles. I spent several years involved with that, the Course in Miracles, until I felt like I was on what I called a higher self retreat, that everything was such an illusion that nothing was real, and therefore it didn't matter what I did. And so I found myself distancing myself from that. I spent 40 days in a religious retreat with a group of people that were involved with the Course in Miracles. And
what group, if you don't mind me asking?
It was a group of people with not a guru, but somebody named Tara Singh from India.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Who was a big follower of Krishnamurti. And I've studied a lot of Krishnamurti's books and those kinds of ideas. And I eventually stopped all of my spiritual practices because I felt like there was this aspect of that all religions were solar on a certain level, that there was this aspect of sun worship, the whole idea of the halos around Buddha and Christ being a sun symbol. And the lunar goddess worship is, to me, became a reflection of the solar religions. And so I started not seeing a difference between them, and became atheist, basically, until I found myself wanting to be part of a community. And I found my way to a Unitarian church, of all things, and have enjoyed fellowship with the Unitarians, although I see things quite differently from how they see things. I appreciate their ways of looking at humanity. And currently I've been reading a guy named Richard Carrier that writes on the historicity of Jesus, of all things, explaining how those thoughts came down to us from ancient times. And I just find myself involved with history at this point. And when I came upon Tim's books, the first book I found of his was The Jesus Mysteries. And I skimmed through it, and it seemed to be okay with Christianity on a certain level. So I put it aside for over 6 years and didn't bother reading it any more than skimming it. Finally, I read it and felt that it was profound. And that eventually drew me into listening to some of Tim's YouTube videos on oneness, and got his book Deep Awake. And I had always been moved by the idea that non-duality and other things teach that the ego is so bad that if it wasn't for the ego, we'd be a nirvana. We'd have samadhi all the time. We'd be enlightened. And I don't think that the ego is such a bad thing. And Tim was the first author that I read that extolled some of the virtues that, evolutionarily speaking, we have an ego for a reason, and that we've come to this place of understanding. So I've really appreciated Tim's books, and read Soul Story is sort of religiously. I've been reading it now for 3 or 4 years, and I keep finding myself going back to it and reading it. But I have a very eclectic approach to spirituality, and
I was just thinking, actually, Henry, what a very interesting pathway that you've had to actually reach where you've reached. I mean, every one of us has our own journey, but you've had a very interesting pathway. I just wonder whether Brian wanted to say something, because he put his hand up a little while ago.
Oh, there were several things, but of course, Henry and I, Sonny, I had quite of a eclectic spiritual path in my walk in my own life. Probably not as deep and intense, but interesting just the same, because I was raised a Southern Baptist, and then found myself in the charismatic movement, and then more New Age, and then A Course in Miracles. I spent several years as a course student. Unity, New Thought, meditation. Now, of course, now I'm in a funny little place right now, because I consider myself more of a monotheistic pagan with involved with Druidry and part of a Unitarian church. I think what Judith was talking about, though, really got my attention, because we're talking about spiritual abuse. Now, as I mentioned, I grew up a Southern Baptist here in the Bible Belt, and I'm a gay man. So trust me, I know about religious abuse, and I know about those kind of mind games, and I've seen the destruction of them. I have some friends that, fortunately, I avoided this, but ended up in those so-called ex-gay ministries. Pardon my language, but I call them mindfuck ministries, because as far as I'm concerned, that's exactly what they are. And I've seen the damaging effects of self-loathing and everything else. But then again, my own experience, I can't speak for them, my own experience, I'm actually kind of grateful for it all, because it's brought me to where I am now. It made me start questioning a lot of things, whereas otherwise I may have just kind of gone along with the flow. But instead, I found myself kind of having to question everything. And I don't think that's such a bad thing. I think it's brought me to where I am now.
Right.
I come back to saying that I just think, unless it's got love in it, and love to everybody of all persuasions, then it ain't a religion as far as I'm concerned.
Trust me, the word love was thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
The word love was thrown around a lot, but it's all manipulation as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Judith.
I love you, so I'm telling you this because I love you.
I think we've all heard that.
I love you, I don't want you going to hell.
Judith, did you want to come
I
back?
just wanted to follow up on exactly what you had said, Cassie. It's about love. If it's not about love, and as I'm sitting here, kind of going over like my history, was like, yeah, of course I left that church. I grew up as wanting, talk about God. By the way, if your screen's the same as mine, all the goddesses are on the top, by the way, guys. Do you?
I think every screen is different.
Is every screen? Oh, I didn't know. Every screen, I mean, all the women are on the top. It's not the goddesses are on top. But yeah, so I was kind of a Demeter goddess. I was the kind of goddess, I was going to have many children. I was going to adopt. I wanted to have my own, but I was going to have, my heroes were people that filled their home up with children that needed to be loved and needed a family. And so that was my plan. And so after my birth, my third child, I said, time to fill my house up, but I need to bring in other children. And so my husband and I adopted, and this was in Texas, a little black baby. And that was not acceptable in the church. I only had, this is a huge congregation, huge, in San Antonio, probably still there today. And one person in this whole big congregation came to see my baby and bring a gift. And then we moved on, of course, because we're not welcome. And we moved on and we ended up in a place outside of Austin and kind of a grassroots missionary little setting. And that split up immediately because by now my baby was a toddler, but he was still Afro-American. And that congregation could not get off the ground.
Oh,
It could not get off the ground because they
wow.
they couldn't accept this little baby. And
When was this? I'm sorry, when was this?
When?
When
when
did this take place?
long time ago.
Yeah, I thought
He was born in 1969, and I got him. He brought him home in a few weeks later in 1970. So it was a long time ago. He's in his late 40s now. So
there were
and
fewer excuses then for that way of thinking than say if it had been like there were fewer excuses for that way of thinking. Say difference in say 10 years earlier. I guess the way I'm looking at it.
10 years earlier from then.
From then, yeah. I mean, as far as I'm looking more, they're looking at more from the viewpoint of the civil rights history and the mentality of that particular time.
And hopefully now we've come on even further.
Right, what's going on today?
Yeah, I know. We still got a long way to go. Trust me, I know that.
Yeah.
I'm involved with social justice work. Trust me, I know all that. I know that.
It looks like this is sort of turning into a group Zoom meeting, doesn't
We're
it?
such a small group, though.
So we ought to bring in Olaf, I think, just to chat to us because Olaf, we haven't heard your point of view.
I think it's quite a lot in the breakouts. I'm happy about that. This is really fascinating to follow. I wanna catch up on that non-duality point at some time, but please go on.
Mary?
I really enjoyed our group. We were talking about sort of everything, really, weren't we? Sort of from non-duality to individualism and how remarkable this planet is because we are so different. You know, like a handful of sand, every little grain is different. And I sort of saw the symbology of that to us, to everybody, and it just blows me away that all these people with these crazy ideas and prejudices, and they're all seeing this world that we're all sharing. They're breathing the same air. They're seeing it with just a little bit of difference, and it's as though I think Rick was saying how that's great because then it's as though we're all feeding it back into the one almost of how amazing this planet is, and sort of I don't know, and adds into the evolution of everything. I'm rambling a little bit, but it's sort of bringing the individuality into the universality through our eyes, and because we see everything in an individual way, we sense it differently, we think about it a little bit differently, and then I suppose our soul recognizes that, and the soul is a mystery to me. And is that So that's sort of goes into the interconnectedness of everything. So it seems as though we're all feeding into this great big amazing I don't know what to call it.
Universality, isn't it? Really?
That's what it is, Cassie. It's just sort of, it's wonderful. That's why I love being with you all, because we're all on that path, and I don't feel such a freak.
You're not a freak, Mary.
Spelled Freak.
We're at the cutting edge, I'll have you know.
Of course we are.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one of the main problems I have with religion, one of the problems I have with religion, and to a certain extent science, is it still sees humans as the only potential for spirituality or wisdom, and I do contest that. I'm always been adored animals and nature, not so much pets, but just nature. And I was watching a program about elephants, and they will trek for 3 days across a Namibian desert just to go to the bones of a matriarchal elephant that has died, and they kind of rub themselves in this graveyard. They're just rubbing themselves on the bones, and they queue up to do it. And we just rather dismiss animals as if, who knows what they're thinking, who knows what their suffering is. And I would love the idea of, I've been whale watching many times, and just seeing a whale close up is incredible. Imagine being able to do some gazing into a whale. It's got a brain, I think a sperm whale's got a brain 4 times the size of ours. Imagine gazing into that. It's a creature on its own terms of the sea.
I've had a glimpse of a dolphin looked at me in my eyes once, and like it just sort of just for that second, it was a connection. So, I agree, Stephen. I totally agree with that.
We shouldn't be too hierarchical about the human race somehow always being separate. Again, it's separateness. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I also think trees as well, trees and plants to a large extent. And they're now discovering, aren't they, that there's communication along the forest floor through all the mycelium, that everything is connected and talking to each other, and things are being felt. And so I think absolutely there's spirituality everywhere we look, we look, in everything.
Yeah. The Wood Wide Web is incredible.
Why are we so surprised? I am surprised, but why are we surprised? We should think,
Well, we've been conditioned for a long time, haven't we, to actually accept the status quo of human beings being above everything else. And I think it's only now that we're beginning to explore and realise we have our place. And we're not actually that well formed when you come to it. I think animals will live on after us, to be quite honest.
Of course.
I think it's because we've been taught where to focus. Where we keep our focus on. I've kept my focus on the wrong thing for so many years. Now I'm going to refocus on trees, on animals, on beauty. When I took my hiking trip in New Mexico, finding myself just stopping, because I always feel like I always have to be going, just stopping, just taking it in. That was very therapeutic for me. And even learning how to bring it home with me in a certain respect, because I still have that energy with me.
I have a question that might tie some things together, and that's that I think Stephen started talking about his conversation with Henry about non-duality, and Tim moving past it. And my question to both of you, do you think that Tim has transcended and included? But because, and I want to put that in a little context, as opposed to rejecting it, like there's a way in which many of our stories appear to be, I used to be a Lutheran or a Jehovah's Witness, but now I'm this. But, that taught us something. It got us where we are. And there's a way in which I'm quite sure that Tim has transcended and included non-duality, because it was very healthy for him. And I think because interdependence is the deepest emerging truth of this historical epic, if I may make a sweeping statement, which I think is true for me anyway. There's a way in which I think non-duality was very, very attractive because we were trying to figure out how we're like the tree or the fungus or the dolphin. And to some extent, there was an overcorrection. And therefore, your separate self, your individual self, your thinking self, your feeling self, your sexual self, all of that stuff should be rejected. Your uniqueness, you're nothing. You're just another animal. You're just a bunch of physical laws. So anyway, somewhere in there, there's a question about, I guess, first of all, Tim's thinking, but also any of your thinking about non-duality. I have a pretty good friend who's a pretty deep fellow, Buddhist scholar, who identifies as a non-dualist, and I don't think he denies individuality in his worldview. So it could be shallow non-duality that does that, as opposed to deeper non-duality. So anyway, that's what I was thinking. I don't know if there are any responses.
No, I appreciate that. And I think part of it is, when the Buddha was around in the old days, there wasn't this concept at all of evolution. There wasn't the sense of life itself. Consciousness itself was evolving. It wasn't there. It was just saw life as samsara, right? And you had to get off the wheel. But then, and what I understand is very recent in history, it's like consciousness itself an emergence of consciousness itself was recognizing it is evolving. And it was like, came conscious of that. And I feel like that changed the whole picture. It's not about anymore getting off the wheel, getting out of life. It's like we're consciousness itself is conscious about its own possibility of emerging. And it has been emerging all the time, but it wasn't conscious of it. And now it is. Mm-hmm. And so now it's a whole nother ballgame that's being played, that's being appreciated, that's I don't know what else, meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not throwing out the baby with the bathwater either. It's because I feel in meditation, often it's kind of a deep letting go of all that. And somehow in that letting go, I'm letting go of a lot of, a lot of conditioned habits. And that is, I feel, very beneficial for evolution, because a lot of that conditioned habits is I have to protect me, I have to defend me. And so much of my consciousness is focused on that. But when that can be let go, it's like consciousness is freed up. And so it's focus. It's not on the pretending and protecting, like Judith, you were describing being a Lutheran pastor's wife. You were so guard and defended. Where was that conscious able to let go and be open and available to? It was very constricted. And so meditation, I feel, is that opportunity to really profoundly let go of all that. And then you come out of meditation and you have this whole new openness, availability, undefendedness to life. And so it's sort of a practice of that. So it's, you step into that non-duality, and so that you could step into duality even deeper, I think, when you come on.
Fantastic. This is worth recording.
Brilliant.
That's brilliant.
Yes.
You said it better than I mean, I really do resonate with that. We mustn't be too kind of kicking old ideas out and saying that, we came to Tim came to his new stuff through these old ideas, through this journey. And in some way, I think it's valuable, and we should treat it with respect and include it. But we've moved on, or Tim has moved it on. Just what you're saying is that actually consciousness is realizing itself, and that is very profound. And that wasn't thought. I'm sure that wasn't thought thousands of years ago. And Tim's again making a good point that they can only work with what they knew. Yeah. The earth was flat. The stars were a peephole into the heaven. I mean, Columbus, when he discovered America, he called them all Indians, because he said, there's no such, this has to be India.
It's got to be India. Yeah.
It can't be a new continent. Why? Because it's not in the Bible. Yeah. Australia, Antarctica do not exist. They're not in the Bible. These must be Indians. And that's the mentality that they had. and it wasn't necessarily their fault, but that's ignorance. But that's how, and maybe today we don't realize things that will be realized in the future, and maybe
Yes.
we'll move
That's
on
the
from-
ever-emergent nature of things, isn't it?
we might move on from this. This is what, we might look back on Tim's work and going, well, that worked then, but this is even new better stuff. I don't know,
But there must be duality. There can't be anything else, because even if you have a thought, then you give the thought out, but it has to be received, even if it's by yourself. I mean, we have to be in relationship to ourselves and to being and to everything else all the time. We are not existing in a plane totally on our own. So it has to be duality.
Well, that's so interesting. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, with non-duality, there's aspects of that type of thinking that, well, first of all, I shouldn't be thinking necessarily. Thinking is bad. Wanting is bad. My humanity is in the way. My emotions are in the way. And I just appreciate Tim's work in saying that, no, that's not the case, that our emotions, our awareness, our feelings, our connectedness, our thinking is all part of the evolutionary process, that we are sum total of what we've become. And I think that there's a celebration of that through what Tim is saying. I can remember reading Deep Awake, and there's several chapters in it that, to me, puts non-duality in its place.
I think we've cracked it, guys, to be quite honest. I think we've cracked it. Do you think we ought to do a bit of gazing at the end, Rick? We seem to have had an open discussion, but we can just have a bit of gazing to finish.
Yeah, is that okay? Kind of a couple minutes here. I'm going to try to play some music to share audio, see if that works, and then pin somebody to come up. I'll see. Again, it's new technology for me.
Did you want to say something, Judith? Did you want to say something?
I wanted to say something to both of you for Cassie, for the meditation was just beautiful.
Yeah.
And I told the group I would elect you to do that again and again.
I'll do it better next time, honestly.
And Rick, thank you so much.
It was, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The leadership, fabulous. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Thank you for making it easy. So let me see.
For sharing who you are, and that's getting to know everybody. It's wonderful.
I sure do appreciate you all.
We're here for you, Brian. Honestly, we're all here for each other, and that's what it's all about. It is a community at the end of the day.
Excuse me, it ain't the meeting time.
All right.
Go,
Are we
Rick.
good? Then I'll try to start this song and then just start pinning people and see how it goes. So I have to first go to share audio. So give me just a second. This might be a little more complicated than I think. We'll see.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
Oh, you're seeing my screen?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know I shared my screen. I'm just supposed to be sharing audio. Oh, wait a minute here. Wait. Oh, that was my son. I'm sorry. I thought
Lovely.
How did that? I'm just trying to
He's
share audio.
lovely.
Oh no. It was, thank you.
Lovely photo.
Thank you. Advanced. Let me. Oh, here it goes. There I did. I clicked the wrong one. There we go. Now I'm on there. Okay. All right. Now I'll get the music here. If I can. Again,
Bit of heavy metal, Rick. Come on.
This is,
No.
oh, here it is. I got to go to Spotify. I'm going the wrong one. Here it goes. Okay. Can you hear the music?
Yeah.
Yes?
Gurudevaय Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachodayate Om Avatara Vidmai Sat Gurudevaya Rimai Tanno Babaji Prachorayate. Om Avatara Vidmahi Satgurudevaya Dhimahi 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 Tanno Babaji.
Yeah, I don't know how well that worked, but I may have. It looked like I was pinning everybody from my end, but I don't know if it worked.
Well, we could select people and gaze. That's what I did.
I lost audio of anybody.
Yeah.
And that was fine. Yeah.
It was fine. It was lovely.
Yeah.
It was lovely to be with you all. Yeah.
And it is interesting to hear people's paths, because then you get insights into them as people and why they're here, and, you know, their time, how time has kind of progressed with them. And I think it is helpful to know why people are here and how they got here.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed hearing how some ways you can see as a wound can also be seen as a gift, that you wouldn't have gotten where you are now had you not been through some things that were hard. That life is hard, let's face it.
It is hard. Yeah. But it shapes us.
Harder for some than others. But
well, let's hope we have an easier week.
First noble truth.
Yeah.
I wanted to add a little thing. It seems to be out of that phase of the evening that I just thought about non-duality. Just seem to have a different view. I don't think we're out of non-duality at all. My way of formulating it is like relative and absolute, in the way of what is about contrast, polarity, bright, dark, up, down, and so on, and what's completely beyond contrast and polarity. And that is also a contrast, so it's beyond that and beyond that. And and that's like, of course, it's the contrast and what's not contrast all the time. And then we add evolution to it. So now it's like the evolution of the forms and contrasts. And I don't get the thing with connecting non-duality to oneness. Non-duality for me is still like not one, not two. Beyond just the one or beyond just the form. And it's like still not one, not two. But it's evolving.
It is evolving, isn't it? For all of us. And we get a better understanding every single time we get together, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rick, very much indeed for looking after us.
I had some technical difficulties at the end, and I don't even know, I lost sound too, so I don't know how that went, but I just thank you all for making this a special.
Well, thank you both. It's been a great session. Thank you both.
Yeah, useful.
thank you all.
It's such a
Thank
joy
you,
to be
everyone.
with you all. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Take care. Much love.
Have a great night, great day, whatever you are, wherever you are.
Thank you.
Much love.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
You too.